You've been hearing it for years. Everyone's moving to Florida and Texas. Sunshine, lower taxes, booming job markets. What's not to love, right? Well, not anymore. In a stunning reversal, new data shows that migration into Florida has dropped by 83% since its pandemic peak. Texas, down 77%. Two of the hottest relocation destinations in America are suddenly cooling off fast. If you're planning to move, invest, or buy a home in one of these states, you need to hit pause because something big is changing. Why are people leaving or choosing not to come at all? And what does this mean for the future of housing, rent prices, and property values in the South? What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. By the end of this video, you'll know whether relocating to Florida or Texas is still a smart move or a financial trap in disguise. And trust me, the reason for this shift might hit closer to home than you think. From 2020 through 2022, Florida and Texas weren't just popular, they were unstoppable. As lockdowns swept through the country, millions packed up and headed south. Lower taxes, warmer weather, and fewer COVID restrictions made these states look like the promised land. In 2021 alone, Florida gained over 300,000 new residents, and Texas added nearly 400,000. U-Haul literally ran out of trucks in some northern cities. Real estate in Miami, Austin, Tampa, and Dallas exploded. Homes that sat at $300,000 were suddenly worth $500,000. This wasn't just a trend, it was a migration wave. But now that wave is crashing. According to a 2024 report by CBRE, domestic migration into Florida dropped 83% from its pandemic peak. Texas saw a 77% drop. These are not small fluctuations. They're seismic shifts. Think about that. If 100 people were moving to Florida during the boom, only 17 are now. Even national moving companies like U-Haul and United Van Lines are reporting steep declines in inbound moves to these once booming states. Meanwhile, demand is surging in places like the Carolinas, Tennessee, and parts of the Midwest. The red state boom didn't just slow down, it hit the brakes. So what changed? Why are people suddenly hitting pause on paradise? Let's dig into the reasons people are either leaving or not showing up in the first place. When you think of Florida and Texas, you picture affordability, sunshine, and freedom. But if you look closer, that image is cracking, and fast. Let's start with the cost of housing. During the pandemic, home prices in Florida rose by over 60% in just 2 years. Texas wasn't far behind. What used to be affordable alternatives to California or New York are now borderline unaffordable. In Miami, the median home price hit $610,000, but the median income hasn't kept up. In Austin, prices surged so fast during 2021 to 2022 that buyers are now underwater as the market corrects. The result? Newcomers are priced out, locals feel squeezed, and would-be migrants are looking elsewhere. But it's not just home prices, it's what comes after you buy. One of the biggest deal breakers in Florida right now is home insurance. Thanks to climate risks and hurricane damage, the average annual home insurance premium in Florida has doubled since 2021, with some homeowners paying over $6,000 a year. Major insurers like Farmers and AAA have exited the state or reduced coverage, leaving homeowners scrambling for options. That low-tax lifestyle suddenly doesn't look so cheap when you add thousands in unexpected costs just to protect your home. Texas, on the other hand, wears its no state income tax badge with pride, but there's a catch. Property taxes in Texas are among the highest in the country. On a $350,000 home, many Texans pay over $7,000 a year in property taxes every single year. Combine that with high utility bills and rising insurance premiums, and the cost of living is biting harder than most transplants expected. Even if you can afford the home and the taxes, life on the ground in these booming states comes with new headaches. More people means more pressure on roads, schools, and hospitals. In major metros like Dallas, Houston, Tampa, and Orlando, traffic has worsened. School districts are over capacity, and new housing can't keep up with demand. It's a classic case of success leading to saturation. Many new residents came expecting peace and space, but instead found congestion and competition. And then there's a quieter, more personal factor: political climate. While not the top reason for everyone, Recent policy shifts in both states have made headlines. Book bans, abortion restrictions, and controversial education laws have made some families and young professionals think twice. For some, it's a reason to move in. For others, it's a reason to move out. Either way, it's affecting the flow of people in and out. Bottom line, Florida and Texas promised affordability, opportunity, and a better life. But rising costs, strained systems, and insurance chaos are making people pause or pack their bags. And that brings us to the next big question. Who's still moving and who's leaving? Despite the slowdown, people are still moving to Florida and Texas, but the kind of people moving in has changed, and that shift tells us everything about what's really going on. Take Florida, for example. Retirees continue to head south, and for them, the economics still work. They often own their homes outright, so rising mortgage rates aren't a concern. Insurance premiums and property taxes, while high, are more manageable when you're not juggling daycare, debt, or career moves. For retirees looking to spend their golden years near the beach or on the golf course, Florida still delivers. Texas, meanwhile, is still pulling in corporate giants. Tesla, Oracle, Hewlett-Packard. They've all made major moves to cities like Austin, Dallas, and Houston. These relocations bring in high-earning professionals with strong job security. But let's be clear, this isn't the same wave of remote workers and middle-class families we saw during the pandemic. That crowd, the real engine behind the Sunbelt boom, is slowing down. And here's where things take a turn. The biggest drop-off has been among young professionals, families, and digital nomads, the very people who rushed in when everything felt wide open and affordable. Back then, Florida and Texas seemed like a dream. Low taxes, warm weather, more space for less money. Now, that dream is dimming. For this group, the math no longer works. Sky-high housing costs, insane insurance premiums, and overcrowded cities have them looking elsewhere. Instead of pushing south, many are turning their attention east and north. The Carolinas are seeing strong inflows thanks to their balance of affordability and job growth. Tennessee is gaining traction too, with no state income tax and lower housing prices. And in the Midwest, cities like Columbus, Indianapolis, and Kansas City are becoming sleeper picks, offering what Florida and Texas used to, a shot at the American dream without going broke. Suddenly, Florida and Texas aren't the obvious choice. They're just two of many options, and in a more crowded field, they're starting to lose ground. Which brings us to the real question: what should you do? If you've been eyeing a move to Florida or Texas, whether to escape high taxes, invest in real estate, or just chase better weather, it's time for a reality check. You might be hearing that the market is cooling, but don't mistake that for affordability. In cities like Miami, Austin, and Tampa, home prices are still significantly higher than before the pandemic. And with interest rates hovering between 6.5% and 7%, monthly payments are making ownership harder to reach than ever. And it doesn't stop at the mortgage. In Florida, for instance, you could be looking at a $2,000 monthly mortgage and an additional $500 or more for insurance. That's not just frustrating, it's enough to push many families out of the buying game entirely. If you're renting, you might finally catch a break, at least on the surface. In Austin, rents are down nearly 7% year over year. Thanks to overbuilding during the pandemic boom, developers flooded the market expecting endless demand, and now there's a short-term surplus. That means you might find better deals than last year. But don't get too comfortable. Insurance costs, property taxes, and rising utility bills often get passed on to tenants in other ways, so even renters aren't totally shielded from the affordability crunch. For investors, the message is clear. Tread carefully. The gold rush days are over. Short-term rental profits in hot markets like Orlando and Houston are thinning out. Vacancy rates are climbing in neighborhoods that were overbuilt in anticipation of continued growth. And hidden costs, insurance, HOA fees, property taxes can quietly destroy your margins. More importantly, think about the demand side. If people are no longer rushing in like they were 2 years ago, who's going to rent your unit or buy your flipped property? The truth? Buying in Florida or Texas in 2020 was a steal. In 2025, it's a gamble that demands real calculation. It's not impossible to win, but you've got to run your numbers, weigh the risks, and understand the shifting landscape. The The sunshine may still be bright, but the path forward isn't as clear as it used to be. Florida and Texas aren't crashing, but they're not coasting either. The era of mass migration to the Sun Belt is hitting a turning point. What used to be a no-brainer move is now a calculated risk. Rising costs, overwhelmed infrastructure, and insurance nightmares are forcing people to rethink their plans, and in some cases, reverse course entirely. This isn't the end of Florida or Texas, it's a shift in the narrative. If you're planning a move, buying property, or investing, this is your signal to dig deeper. What once worked for everyone might not work for you anymore. And while the spotlight dims on these southern giants, other regions like the Carolinas, Tennessee, and the Midwest are quietly stepping up, offering affordability and opportunity. So here's the big question. Is this just a pause or the start of a permanent migration reset? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you still move to Florida or Texas today? And don't miss my next video, so like and subscribe to keep updated.